Hey, shalom everyone. It's Safa Yahoo. I'm sitting in the park today, and I just wanted to touch base with you guys to share a little information on a topic that I've actually been discussing with a few other comrades over the last few days and over the last few weeks, and that is the topic of sexual passions, and dealing with the sexual energies. Um, when you because of and I'm just speaking for Hebrews. We can speak for religious groups. Because of the way most religious groups are set up, and because fornication and whatnot is frowned upon, you find yourself living a celibate life until one finds a mate. And then coming into the Hebrew walk, where we don't have like matchmaking and things like that, like back in the days, it's pretty difficult to find a mate. And so we end up living celibate lives, and we end up building up sexual energy. And if we don't know how to manage the sexual energies, the sexual passions, then what happens is they manifest themselves in destructive ways. So you can see that, like with the Catholic Church, you see what's happening with them and how the pedophilia that's coming out. If you look at with Buddhism, and the Buddhist monk who was basically pressuring and guilting the nuns into having sex with him, using his power to have sex with the nuns and whatnot. And even in our community, which I consider myself a part of the Hebraic community, that you see that there's a lot of mismanagement of the sexual energies, and a lot of overly sexual individuals out there who, whether they're single and they're just fornicating, or whether they're married and trying to have another wife on the side because they see something they like, whatever it may be, elders and whatnot using their power to entice women to have sex with them, and using their influence to entice women to have sex with them, and vice versa, the women preying on the men and seducing them to do it as well. It goes both ways. But we see that there's that the suppression of the sexual energies and the mismanagement of the sexual energies is destructive, and we've seen this. So when you look at it, the sexual passions mismanaged is like the arch enemy. It's the adversary to living a moralistic life, and I don't even like to use that term too much. But we're out of harmony. We're out of balance. So the Bible talks about it because the Bible is moral. It speaks about morality. It mostly speaks about morality when it comes to dealing with a group of people. Nation building. And it says that, no, do not commit adultery. Do not fornicate. Do not commit harlotry or cause someone else to commit harlotry. But the Bible really doesn't go past saying like, don't do it. Don't do it. And if anyone's got any verses that has like in the Bible that has like a method or a tool to use in order to manage the sexual energies, if they have a verse in there, just go ahead and drop it to me. Whether it be on YouTube or whether it be on Facebook or Instagram, drop me a verse and let me see something if I've missed it. But it just basically says don't do it. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali talk about how to combat the sexual urges, and it says frugal eating, so eating enough. Yogananda teaches that you should fill the body 2/3 with food and 1/3 with water. This is good for a plethora of reasons, not just to combat the sexual urges, but just a good living and to keep the mind clean. 2/3 food, 1/3 water, you should be good to go. But the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali says frugal eating, not overeating and not oversleeping, is going to help you to manage the sexual energies. So that's, to me, a good method. But I wanted to explore it a little more deeply. Natural living helps to keep the mind clean. It helps to keep the sexual urges balanced, because we're not combating sexual urges. We're not combating sexual passions. It's a part of our nature. You dig that? Reproducing and having children, that urge, that nature within us is right next to the strongest nature that's in man, which is self-preservation. It's right there with it. Self-preservation being the strongest, the next one you have is the desire to reproduce. If there's not these natures built inside of us, then the perpetuating of a species is not going to take place, right? You would die out. So we're not combating sexual energy. We're learning how to manage it and put it in its proper place. We can do that by natural living. Natural living deals with like food, dwelling, and the company we keep. In order to talk about natural food, we have to, in order to avoid unnatural foods, we need to discuss what's natural. So what's natural living for us? We do that by observation. We do that by observation, experimentation, and reasoning, right? So when we look at natural food, let's take a look at it. Let's look at the human being's teeth. The teeth of the human being are built for, we have some that are built for tearing and some that are built for grinding. Now, an animal that eats meat, right, a carnivore, has just pretty much tearing. Their teeth are canines, they just tear. They tear and swallow their food. When you look at herbivores and fruit-eating animals, they tend to have a grinding motion to them. The human has both tearing and grinding built into it. So it shows that we're not necessarily meant to eat meat. When you look at the digestive system of animals, when you see the shorter digestive systems, they usually tend to eat meat. When you see the longer digestive systems, you see that they eat fruits and vegetables. The human being has a very long digestive system, and it's meant to eat fruit and vegetables. Again, meat is not something that's natural to the human being. When you look at when you observe like the senses, and you start observing the senses, you see that the slaughterhouses are usually kept on the outskirts. They're usually kept out of sight. Why? Because your average human being does not want to see the slaughtering of animals. Your average human being does not like the sight of blood. It doesn't like the scent of blood. Therefore, they keep it out of sight, and you get your meats and products packaged up real nice and sent to you. You don't like the smell of flesh. The only time you start liking the smell of flesh is when you season it with some good spices and herbs and sugars and whatnot. You season that thing up, and then it takes on a delightful smell. Whereas if you look at fruits and vegetables, fruits have a delightful smell. The citruses and whatnot, they have these delightful smells, and you are very, you can look at it by the scents of the candles and whatnot in the stores and whatnot. You see they're all named after apples and oranges and cherries and things of this nature, because these are delightful scents to us. So if we look at the teeth, the digestive system, and the observing of the senses, how the senses react, you see that humans are usually aversive to eating animals and eating flesh, right? If you look at the nourishment of children, the mothers, if a mother doesn't eat enough fruits and vegetables and grains and whatnot, then she doesn't produce enough milk, a sufficient level of milk to nourish the child. A heavy meat diet is just not going to get it done. So meat is a foreign matter in the body. And when you start to introduce this foreign matter into the body, it only breaks it down slightly. It's only going to be partially digested. Not much of it makes it to the expulsion stage. Now, what happens to this matter, this animal matter, that doesn't make it to the expulsion stage? What tends to happen is it starts to, by the law of gravitation, it starts to find itself in the crevices of the tissues of the body. Now, when it finds itself in the crevices of the tissues of the body, it starts to irritate the nervous system. It starts to irritate the nervous system, and it applies pressure on the body. Because these things, there's matter, there's foreign matter trapped inside of your body, and it's building up pressure. That's why when you look at the sexual urges, if you're just mindful of sexual urges, it definitely feels like a pent-upness, like a pent-up energy or a pressure inside of the body. And this is coming from a lot of ways from foreign matter being introduced into the body by way of foods that you're not necessarily used to eating unnatural food products that or food that is not natural to the human body. So over the periods of time, you've seen that religious groups have tried to combat sexual desires in many different ways. You see that they've went to overly fasting. You see that they've went to scourging, like actually afflicting themselves. And you see that they've like retreated to monasteries, right? They retreat to monasteries where they can't find the temptations. And you've seen that this actually does not work. That it actually does not work. And these things are done because they've looked at sexuality, sexual passions, and sexual urges as a negative thing. It's not a negative thing. It's not a negative thing. It's just a thing that's often mismanaged, right? It's just often mismanaged. So we've seen that overly fasting doesn't work because that urge comes back around like a cycle, and it comes up, and then you find yourself in conflict with yourself, fighting against yourself. And we are not to be fighting against our internal system. We should be in harmony with our internal system. We should be in harmony with it. There shouldn't be any conflict within the body. It should be balanced, you know, but it comes from us having a negative outlook on sexuality, right? We need it for the preservation of the perpetuating of the human race. But it needs to be in check. That's what makes us different from animals, is that things, we decide when it's right to engage and when it's not right to engage. And it's the way it should be. We should not be ruled by these energies running haywire or spiking within our body. So we see that these things are not working, but we see through experimentation that when a person has a natural, clean diet, that he tends to be able to manage these things much better. You know, there's different methods of yoga and postures and physical activities that can go with your diet that also help to manage the energies within the body. Because the sexual energy is a powerful creative force. And it's not just an energy that is used for sex. It can be used for creating other things, right? It can be used for creativity of any type. We see that boxers and sports players, some of them have a rule that they don't have sex before events because they feel like their virtue, their strength is zapped when they engage in sexual activity. So we do see that this can, the liveliness of the human being is in this energy as well. So we have creativity, we have strength, liveliness, vitality, all caught up in this energy that is stored, that if not distributed throughout the being correctly, can lead to internal damage and also external damage, meaning your environment is now tainted or now going through problems with the various scandals throughout the religious communities. So food and asanas or yoga postures are ways that we can combat but it's a way that we can bring the sexual energies into balance. We can bring them into a harmonious balance. So it's something to think about. It's something to think about. When I first started to talk about this video, I was going to talk about, the hormones, the testosterone, the estrogen, and oxytocin, I think it's called. It's got a name. And I was going to talk about the libido and all these things, but that's getting a little complicated. I didn't want to get too scientific. I just wanted to keep it to things that that the average person can look at, can acknowledge, and can experiment with. If you look at it, if you eat modestly, if you don't oversleep, you'll see that the body is more equipped to distribute the energies correctly. So 2/3 food, 1/3 water. Sleeping, you don't really need to sleep 8 hours. If I'm tired, I sleep 4. Lately, it's been a lot of like 3.5 hours sleeping. And when I wake up, I don't stir awake, I pop up. I hop right up. It's because there's things that I'm doing throughout the day that's allowing me to have energy. And we can talk about that on another video, but I do talk about it on my various posts often too. Your posture and whatnot has a lot to do with you being energized throughout the day. Not just awake, because a lot of people can stay awake, but to be energized, to be fully alert, to be vigorous throughout the day. These things are possible when you manage your day better. So 2/3 food, 1/3 water, not oversleeping, and eating natural foods. Eating natural foods, your fruits, your vegetables, your grains. And avoiding the meat products because of how it irritates the nervous system and stimulates the nervous system, right? The nervous system, when you start looking at the sexual organs, there's a lot of nerves down there, baby, right? So you don't want to be irritating the nervous system, and you don't want to be putting pressure on the nervous system and pressure on the organs as well, which is what you feel when you get the sexual desire rising up. It feels like a pressure. So I want you to, those are just a couple of things to think about that will help you out. There's more. There's definitely more. But I just wanted to touch base on our diet, our sleeping regimen, and I wanted to talk about physical activities that you can do. Not just any physical activity, but the type of physical activity that distributes the energy better and balances the energy within the body, which is, to me, the best one for that is going to be yoga. So if you have any comments, if you have any other tips, if you have some of those Bible verses that maybe speak about how to manage the sexual energy, then drop the comment, drop a comment, drop a DM. Most people like to DM me. They don't like to be seen talking to me in public. It's okay. I still love you. But yeah, that's just a little brief information on sexual passions. I might follow it up with a few posts to get more in detail, but that's just like a little freestyle discussion on ways that we can start to manage our sexual energies better and redistributing this energy for things that we can for things that can benefit us, right? While we're looking for our wives, I'm engaged, I'm betrothed, but while we're looking for our wife to get married, while we're looking for our mate, while you're looking for your husband, you can be using that energy to further your business, to write that book, to all those activities that you leave undone. When you awaken, when you raise the energy from the base, from the lower chakras, when you raise that energy, you'll see that the quality of life is better, the senses are better, and you'll see that the creativity is there. Your ability to form ideas and whatnot will be better if you can. I like to use the word transmutate, because we watch a lot of Full Metal Jacket. To transmutate that energy into creative forces to do some good for you while you're waiting for your mate. So, as I say, I hope this helps someone. I hope it gives you something to think about. But most importantly, what I hope these videos do is inspire you to do more research on your own, because no one should be taking anyone's word for this. No one should be taking anyone's word for this. Books are great, and studying it in books is great, but there's nothing like sensing what's going on in your body and being able to validate the things that are being taught or the things that are being shared. So life's an experiment. Enjoy it, and come up with some good methods and good tools for you to fulfill a lot of these commandments that we're getting. If it says don't commit adultery, if it says don't commit fornication, if it says don't cause anyone to be a harlot and don't be a harlot yourself, then we need tools on how to do such a thing. And it doesn't and it isn't enough for it to be moral. It isn't enough to say do it because it's the right thing to do. It isn't enough, because you're often faced with real situations where these energies are manifesting themselves powerfully within you, and you need a tool in order to balance it out. Also the gates with the eyes. Before I go, I'll touch on the gates real quick. What you see, and a lot of time, what you see causes memories to arise, right? If you're like me and you came out of a relationship that was sexual, and then you go into try to be celibate, then when you see a nice looking woman, oftentimes these causes memories and sexual desires. It takes a while for you to be able to see the opposite sex as a soul, as a human being, and not as a sexual object. It took me quite some time to start to be able to look at women as a manifestation of Yah, having Yah inside of them, or God inside of them. It took me a while to look at them that way. They were sexual objects coming into the walk. They all look like sexual objects. And then my second thought was, oh man, this is a child of God. Let me look at him that way. It took a while. So, I understand what you're going through when you see a beautiful woman and you're ready to go. You see someone's picture on Instagram and we slipping and sliding into the DMs. I understand it, but there's a way to overcome this by, for the moment, you probably should try to cover your gates, not to be looking at overly sexual TV shows or listening to overly sexual music, and also certain scents cause memories to arise that are arousing. Certain foods that you eat are aphrodisiacs. A lot of them are abominations. So knowing that most of my audience is Hebrew, we know that the dietary laws keeps us away from a lot of aphrodisiac foods. But like dark chocolate is an aphrodisiac. There's a lot of things that we eat. Pomegranates. There's a lot of things that we eat that can actually raise the testosterone level and also make us a little bit, horny. So it's just to understand which of these foods do these things and to just moderate it and be balanced. So yeah, hopefully that helped. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think of it. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy the rest of this good day. So shalom to everyone.